Women have been objectified in art since art was created. Historically, women's bodies have been a muse and object to look at for the leisure of males. Many depictions of females and the female body have been created by and for men. Women's bodies have been the sole subject of many art pieces throughout history. The male-dominated art culture that has existed for thousands of years has greatly influenced the art that has been created and has prompted artists to make art that comments on this, particularly in the last century when various social movements positioned women at a higher social class than they were previously considered. Women's bodies have been depicted for centuries, but they have largely been sexualized following the Renaissance period. In 1486, Sandro Botticelli painted The Birth of Venus, depicting the goddess of love and beauty arriving to the island of Cyprus. The image of the goddess portrayed an idealized vision of a woman's body, particularly because she is standing in the middle of a shell. Venus's position exemplifies her perfection, as she is in the place that a pearl would usually be found. With incredibly long and blonde hair, perky breasts, curved hips, and smooth skin, Venus represented the ideal version of beauty. However, Venus was painted at the tail end of the Renaissance period, which largely had created depictions of Christianity and did not contain nudity. It was around this time that the female body began being explicitly sexualized. In 1964, Yoko Ono created Cut Piece, a performance work where she sat alone on a stage and dressed in a nice suit with a pair of scissors in front of her. The audience was given instructions that they could come up to the stage and cut off a piece of Ono's clothing for themselves. Ono remained still throughout the performance. The piece is a conceptual and physical work where Ono was able to offer the participants a physical piece of clothing while making them question the underlying ideological structures of the performance. This conceptual piece was one of the first, although it is much more common now. As we watch the cut piece, it is important to acknowledge the women's role in the performance. Ono offered a space for individuals to participate in the unveiling of the female body for artistic purposes. The viewers were using a woman to participate in art with little acknowledgement of her role in exposing herself and being vulnerable so that the piece could be complete and have meaning. Due to Yoko Ono's lack of movement, the artist becomes a sexual object rather than a subject. As a sexual object, the participants have not come to know the artist or more deeply understood her art, but solely see her as an object. At the time that Yoko Ono was performing Cut Piece, political and social dynamics were shifting dramatically. During the same year, the Civil Rights Act passed, and women almost gained recognition in the employment provisions of Title VIII. During this period, women did not have equal rights and were largely at the mercy of men. Yoko Ono's Cut Piece was debuted at a time that women were not legally entitled to equal pay or equal opportunities, and was an important performance art piece because of the social constraints that women had. Women's rights would not legally be enforced for another 8 years when the Equal Employment Act was passed. But at the time of this piece, many women were solely operating as housewives, childbearing was the expectation of women, and being docile and obedient to one's husband was the standard. Yoko Ono's Cut Piece represents a time where women were at the mercy of the people and culture around them for their well-being and livelihood, and provides a stark comparison to the treatment of women as solely sexual beings.